Okay, I want to start today by running a little simulation. I want you to just close your eyes for a second. We're going to do a quick visualization.
Okay, I'm with you.
Picture yourself walking into your local bank branch. I mean, one of those old school ones, high ceilings, marble floors, that that specific smell of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. You know the kind of place.
Oh, yeah. I know it well. It's always a little too quiet. It has that echo.
Exactly, that echo. So you walk up to the teller window, you reach into your pocket, and you pull out a crisp $100 bill. Benjamin Franklin is looking right back at you. And you slide it under the glass. You just say, "Hi, I need some smaller change. Can I get 520s, please?"
The most mundane transaction in the world. I mean, people do this every single day. You're just exchanging one form of money for another.
Right. It's a simple exchange of value for an identical form of value. 100 is 100. But then the teller starts counting. She snaps the bills.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. And then she stops.
She stops at 80.
She stops at $80. She takes that fifth $20 bill, looks you dead in the eye, crumples it up, and just drops it into her own pocket.
Oh.
Then she slides the $80 back to you, gives you this big smile, and says, "Have a wonderful afternoon."
Okay, well, in that scenario, I am definitely not saying have a nice day. I'm calling for the manager. I'm probably pulling out my phone and calling the police.
You'd be furious. You'd be screaming theft right there in the middle of the lobby because you walked in with 100 units of purchasing power and you walked out with 80. You were literally penalized for the privilege of exchanging the paper in your hand.
It just sounds completely insane when you frame it that way. It sounds criminal. It sounds like a shakedown.
It does. But here's the hook, and this is really why we are here today. This scenario, it's not hypothetical. This isn't some work of fiction. This is exactly, and I mean exactly, what happens thousands of times a day all across the United States.
You're talking about precious metals.
I'm talking about the state tax map. You walk into a coin shop. You hand over your paper currency, your Federal Reserve notes, to exchange them for constitutional money, silver or gold. And depending on what zip code you happen to be standing in, the state government acts just like that greedy teller.
They reach in and skim, 7, 8, maybe 10% right off the top?
Right off the top. And most people they accept it. They look at the receipt, they see sales tax, and they just shrug their shoulders. They think, well, I pay tax on toothpaste, I pay tax on a new TV, so why wouldn't I pay tax on a gold coin?
And that right there, that's the conflict we have to dig into today because, my role here is to be the skeptic, the legal realist, and to the state, that gold coin is a television. It's just another product on a shelf.
Exactly. My believer persona sees it as a moral outrage, as wealth confiscation. You're trying to protect your wealth, not buy a consumer good.
But from a statutory perspective, the state's argument is that gold is a commodity, not a currency. And I think what we're going to uncover in this deep dive is that treating sound money like a consumer product isn't just a philosophical annoyance. It's a wealth destroyer.
It's a mathematical disaster.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to go beyond the usual fear-mongering about the IRS. Everybody worries about capital gains tax, right? That's the tax you pay on the back end when you eventually sell.
It's the exit tax, yeah.
We're not worried about the exit today. We're looking at the front door. We're going to conduct a kind of forensic audit of how your state residency, your zip code, creates a structural disadvantage that puts you in a hole the minute you start trying to save.
So we're looking at the math of confiscation.
The math of confiscation, we're going to cover something called the threshold trap, which is honestly one of the most baffling and, frankly, predatory laws I've ever seen. And then finally, we'll talk about jurisdictional arbitrage.
Which is just a fancy way of saying how to legally get around the theft.
Exactly. So let's buckle up. We're going to open the map. Let's start with the basics. I want to get into the psychology of the stacker, the investor. When you decide to move money from a savings account into silver or gold, what's the actual goal? What is that desire loop?
It's pretty simple, really. It's preservation. You believe the dollar is losing value, which, objectively it is through inflation, and you want to move that purchasing power into a hard asset. The goal is to get the most ounces possible for your depreciating paper money.
Right. It's an accumulation game. If I have $1,000, I want $1,000 worth of metal, period. But there is immediate friction. We call this the leaky bucket.
I like that analogy.
Imagine you're carrying water, that's your wealth, from a river to your house. But the bucket you're using has holes in it. The water is leaking out with every single step you take.
Okay.
In the precious metals market, there are two main holes in that bucket, and we need to distinguish between them. because one is, well, it's fair, and the other one is, well, it's highly debatable.
Okay, so let's identify hole number one. I assume that's the premium.
The premium. Let's crunch the numbers. I want to be very precise here.
Yeah.
Let's say the spot price of silver is $30 an ounce. Now, for the listeners who might be new to this, can you define spot price?
Sure. The spot price is the paper price. It's the price of a big contract on the commodities exchange, like in New York or London. It's the theoretical price for, say, a 5,000-ounce bar delivered to a warehouse. It is not the price of a coin you can hold in your hand.
Okay, so I can't just walk into a coin shop and pay 30 bucks.
No way. The dealer has to pay for the coin to be minted, shipped, insured. They have to keep the lights on in the shop, pay their employees, and, make a small profit. So they charge a markup, a premium. Let's say it's $2 over spot.
Okay, so the sticker price on the coin is $32. That $2 is hole number one in our bucket. That's roughly a 6.6% markup.
And that's pretty standard. I mean, that's just the cost of doing business. In any investment, there's a bid-ask spread. You accept that 6.6% hole because you're paying for the fabrication, the distribution, and the service. You start 6.6% in the hole.
Which means the price of silver has to go up 6.6% just for you to break even.
Correct. And that's fair play. That's capitalism at work. No one has a problem with that.
Okay, so that's a hurdle, but it's a jumpable one. But now, let's talk about hole number two. This is the one that really gets me angry. This is the tax layer.
Right.
Let's say you live in a state, we'll call it a red zone state for now, that charges an 8% sales tax on that transaction. Walk me through the math on that.
Okay, so get your calculator out. You're paying $32 for the coin. The state then slams an 8% tax on the total transaction amount. So that's another, let me see, $2.56.
So now I'm paying $34.56 for a coin that has a raw melt value of $30.
Right. So now let's look at the forensic reality of that single purchase. You're paying a total premium of nearly $4.60 on a $30 asset. That is a 15.3% premium.
15%.
15%. Just gone.
Let that number sink in for a minute. You walk into the store with $10,000 of your hard-earned money. You slap it on the counter before you even walk out the door. $1,500 of your purchasing power has evaporated. Poof, it's just gone.
And here's the break-even trap that comes with it. In the stock market, people freak out if they lose 2% in a day. If you buy silver in a high-tax state, you're down 15% instantaneously.
Right.
For you to just get back to zero, for you to just be able to look your spouse in the eye and say, honey, we haven't lost any money yet, the price of silver has to rally by 15%.
And let's be honest about the commodities market. A 15% rally is a massive move. That can take a year or longer. That's a bull run. That's the kind of year that gets covered on financial news.
Exactly. You are basically betting on a massive market shift just to stop the bleeding. You're trying to run a race, but you're starting with a ball and chain shackled to your ankle.
But wait, I want to push on this.
Yeah.
Because the skeptic in you should be saying, well, so what? It's 8%. It stings. But is it really that big of a deal in the long run?
It is a massive, massive deal if you understand the power of compounding. Or in this case, the power of compound destruction.
Explain that, because normally we hear about compound interest, the magic of money making more money. This is the complete opposite.
Okay, think about it this way. Let's run another simulation. We have two investors. Let's call them Texas Tim and Tennessee Tom. Texas, as we'll discuss, is a haven. It has no tax on metals. Tennessee, on the other hand, has a huge sales tax. Let's use nearly 10% for easy math.
Okay, Tim versus Tom. I'm ready.
Both of them are disciplined savers. They both set aside $500 a month from their paychecks to buy silver. They do this religiously for 20 years.
Okay, solid plan for both of them.
Texas Tim takes his $500, pays the dealer premium, and gets his metal. Tennessee Tom takes his $500, but he immediately has to give $50 of it to the state in tax. So effectively, he's only buying about $450 worth of silver every single month.
So right off the bat, every month, Tim is getting an extra ounce or two of silver that Tom isn't.
Correct. Now, multiply that small difference by 12 months, then multiply that by 20 years. The difference in the physical size of the stack between the guy in Texas and the guy in Tennessee it's staggering.
It's not just a few coins we're talking about.
Oh, no. We are talking about entire monster boxes of silver. That's 500 ounces that the Tennessee guy doesn't own simply because he was forced to give that portion of his wealth to the state government every single month.
That is genuinely terrifying. It's the difference between retiring comfortably and realizing you're 5 years short. It's the difference between leaving a real legacy for your kids or leaving a legacy for the Department of Revenue.
It really is. It fundamentally changes the asset class. In a high-tax state, silver isn't a safe haven. It's a liability until proven otherwise. You're essentially digging yourself a 15% hole and then hoping the market is kind enough to fill it back in for you.
So we've established the tax is a wealth killer. But the U.S. isn't a monolith, right? It's a patchwork quilt of different laws. I was looking at the map last night, and it's actually kind of bizarre how different the rules are just one state over.
It's a complete mess. It's a relic of 50 different state legislatures trying to figure out what money is, and most of them getting it wrong.
We can basically categorize all 50 states into 3 buckets. We have the good, the bad, and they're just plain confusing.
Let's use the terms from the source material: the havens, the thieves, and the traps.
Okay, let's start with some optimism. Who are the havens? Where can you go to escape that greedy bank teller from our story?
The havens are states like Texas, Florida, Utah, Wyoming, South Dakota. The list is actually growing, which is a good sign. In these states, the legislature has explicitly recognized that gold and silver are distinct from regular consumer goods.
So they basically agree with our believer persona. They're saying you're not buying a toaster, you're just exchanging one form of currency for another.
Essentially, yes. In a haven state, the sales tax on precious metals bullion is 0. And it doesn't matter if you buy one single mercury dime for $3 or if you buy $1 million worth of gold bars. The tax is 0, period.
That is the friction-free environment an investor wants. If I live in Texas, my break-even point is only that dealer premium, that 6 or 7%. I'm structurally advantaged from the start.
You're starting the race right at the starting line, not 50 yards behind everyone else.
Okay, so that's the dream scenario. Now, tell me about the nightmares. Who are the thieves?
The thieves, and again, that's your editorial term. Legally, they are just revenue seekers.
A very generous term.
It is. These are states that tax all precious metals transactions. They make absolutely no distinction. To them, a gold coin is a fidget spinner. It's a pair of sneakers. It's just taxable stuff.
Do we have some names? Who's on the naughty list here?
Well, the list changes, so you always have to check the current year's statutes. But historically, states like New Jersey, Maine, Kentucky, Hawaii, they have been very hostile territory for metals investors. If you live there, you pay the tax on everything. Full stop.
So if I'm in New Jersey and I walk into a coin shop,
Yeah.
I am immediately getting hit with that full 15% friction we calculated earlier.
Yes. You're in that leaky bucket from day one. Unless, of course, you use the strategies we're going to talk about later on.
Right, the jurisdictional arbitrage. We will get there. But before we solve the problem, we have to look at the third category. And this is the one that I think catches 90% of the people listening to this right now.
Yeah.
The traps.
The traps, yes. These are the states with exemption thresholds.
Exemption thresholds.
Yeah.
It sounds so bureaucratic and harmless. When you actually see how it works in practice, honestly, it feels predatory.
It's certainly designed in a way that maximizes revenue from the little guy while letting the big guy off the hook entirely.
Explain the logic, if you can even call it that. How does a threshold state work?
These states are trying to find a middle ground. They say, okay, we don't want to tax serious investment, but we do want to tax retail purchases or collectibles. But then the question becomes, how do you define the difference between an investor and a casual shopper?
And they use a dollar amount to do it.
Exactly. They just arbitrarily decide that if you spend a small amount of money, you're just a consumer. But if you spend a large amount of money, you must be a serious investor.
Let's use the California case study for this, because California is the absolute king of the threshold trap.
The California rule is famous, or maybe infamous in the industry. The threshold there is $2,000.
Okay, I want to role play this again, because the math here is so stupid, I need to hear it out loud to actually believe it's real.
All right, let's do it.
So I'm in Los Angeles. I walk into a coin shop. I've been saving up my tips from waiting tables. I have roughly $2,000 to spend. I pick out a nice stack of silver eagles. The guy rings it up. The subtotal on the register comes to $1,999.
Okay, so you are one single dollar short of the threshold.
$1 short. So what happens?
Because the transaction is under $2,000, the state of California classifies this as a retail sale. They then apply the full sales tax. In LA, with county and city taxes, that can be nearly 10%. So let's just say they add $190 in tax.
So my $1,999 purchase
now costs you roughly $2,189 out of your pocket.
Okay, so I pay $2,189. I get $1,999 worth of silver. Now, let's rewind the tape. Same store, same day. But this time, I grab 1 more ounce of silver. Just one generic round. My subtotal now clicks over to, say, $2,005.
And now the magic happens. Because you have crossed that $2,000 threshold, you are now an investor in the eyes of the state. The sales tax rate on your entire purchase drops to 0%.
So what is my total out-of-pocket cost for the bigger stack of silver?
$2,005.
Wait, stop. Let me just say this as clearly as I can. In scenario A, I bought less silver, and I paid more money. I paid almost $2,200 for less metal.
Correct.
In scenario B, I bought more silver, and I paid less money out of my bank account.
That is the mathematical paradox of the threshold state. It is literally, undeniably cheaper to buy more silver.
That is absolute insanity. It's a system that penalizes the poor. It penalizes the cautious person who just wants to buy a few coins at a time to be irresponsible.
It is a fundamentally regressive tax structure. The millionaire who walks in and drops $50,000 on gold bars, he never pays a dime of sales tax in California. He probably doesn't even know this law exists. But the guy trying to protect his savings by buying $500 a month, he gets hammered with that tax every single time.
And this brings us to a huge problem with standard financial advice. We always hear about dollar cost averaging, right? DCA. Just buy a little bit every month, smooth out the volatility.
It's the standard advice for the stock market, for crypto, for basically everything.
But if you live in a threshold state, a trap DCA is poison. It's financial suicide.
It is. If you blindly follow DCA and buy $200 worth every paycheck in a trap state, you are voluntarily incinerating your own wealth. You are feeding the beast. You are donating 10% of your hard-earned savings to the state for absolutely no reason other than you didn't know the rules of the game.
So what's the adjustment? If I'm in California, or what about New York? New York has a $1,000 threshold, right?
Yes. New York and Massachusetts are both at 1,000. Connecticut has one as well. There are several of these states.
So if I live in one of these states, what do I do? How do I fight back?
You have to stop being a machine gunner and start being a sniper. You cannot just spray small purchases all over the place. You have to save your fiat currency in a boring old savings account. Let it pile up.
Which feels totally wrong, because the whole point is you want to get out of the dollar as fast as possible.
It feels terrible. You're sitting there watching inflation eat your cash alive. But you have to hold the line. You have to wait until your pile of cash exceeds the state's threshold. Once you have $2,001, then and only then do you walk into the shop and execute one single massive tax-free strike.
You need to lump sum it?
You have to lump sum it. It requires a ton of discipline, but it saves you 10% immediately. That is a guaranteed 10% return on your patience.
That's a great way to frame it. Your patience pays a 10% yield. But, okay, let me play devil's advocate for a second. You're talking about saving up $2,000. For some people, that might take 6 months, maybe even a year. In that time, what if the price of silver doubles?
And that's the risk. That's the opportunity cost of the strategy. If you're forced to sit in cash for a year waiting to hit the threshold, and silver goes from $30 to $50, you lost out on way more than the 8 or 10% tax.
So it's a gamble either way.
It is a calculation. You have to weigh the guaranteed loss of the tax against the potential loss of the market moving away from you. But historically, silver can go sideways or down for a long, long time. The tax is a guaranteed loss. The market move is not. I usually tell people to bet on avoiding the guaranteed loss.
That's a fair point. Control what you can control. You can control whether you pay the tax. You can't control the market price. Okay, so we've covered the havens, which are good, the thieves, which are bad, and the traps, which are just confusing and dangerous. But let's say I'm stuck. Let's say I live in a thief state, a place where there's no threshold. They tax everything from $1 to $1 million.
Right.
Or maybe I'm in California and I just don't have the discipline or the income to save up $2,000. I want to buy now. What do I do? Do I have to pack up and move to Texas?
Well, moving is one option, and frankly, plenty of people are doing that for tax reasons far beyond just this. But it's a drastic solution. There's a much, much easier way. It's called jurisdictional arbitrage.
Jurisdictional arbitrage. It sounds like something a hedge fund manager does in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
Break it down for us normal people.
It sounds complex, but the concept is beautifully simple. You do not have to store your wealth in the same jurisdiction where you sleep. Just because you live in a high tax state doesn't mean your assets have to live there with you.
So how do I actually execute this strategy?
You use what's called the vaulting solution. So instead of walking into your local shop and taking immediate physical possession of the metal, which is what triggers the local sales tax you buy from a major reputable dealer online, but, and this is the crucial part, you do not have them ship it to your house.
Because if they ship it to my house in the high-tax state, I still get hit with a tax, right?
Correct. Sales tax is almost always based on the point of delivery. If that FedEx truck drops the package at your door in a thief state, the online dealer is legally obligated to collect and remit the tax for that state.
So where do I send it instead?
You have the dealer ship it directly to a private allocated vault that is located in a haven state. The two most popular states for this are usually Delaware and Texas.
Delaware and Texas. Why those two specifically?
Well, Delaware has no sales tax on anything, period. It's a corporate haven. And Texas, as we said, has a specific exemption making precious metals tax-free. So when the transaction happens, the legal point of delivery is a tax-free zone. The dealer charges you zero sales tax. It's that simple.
Let me get this straight. I'm sitting on my couch in New Jersey. I go online, I order gold, I pay for it, it gets shipped to a secure vault in Delaware. And because the metal never physically touched the ground in New Jersey, I legally save that 10%.
100%. You have legally and ethically bypassed your local tax dragnet.
That is beautiful. It's a loophole, but it's a totally legal one.
It's not even really a loophole. It's just understanding how jurisdictional law works. And it connects back to themes we've discussed in previous deep dives, like in episode 130 on privacy. When you vault your metals in a private, non-bank facility in another state, you're doing two things.
Okay.
One, you're saving the tax, which we've covered. But two, you're creating a geographic and political buffer.
Right. It's off the local radar.
Your wealth is secured in a high-security, insured facility, and it is physically located outside of your local government's immediate reach. If your state decides to get even more aggressive with wealth confiscation or new asset taxes in the future, your metal simply isn't there for them to grab.
But I have to play the skeptic for a second, or rather, I have to anticipate the skeptic's biggest challenge to this, because there is a very, very loud mantra in the precious metals community. If you don't hold it, you don't own it.
It's the golden rule for many stackers, and I respect the sentiment behind it.
Right. The prepper mindset says, I want my coins in my safe in my basement where I can physically touch them. If the world ends, if SHTF, stuff hits the fan and my gold is in a vault in Delaware, it might as well be on the moon. Doesn't vaulting defeat the entire purpose of having emergency assets?
That is a completely valid concern, and this is where we have to have a mature conversation about trade-offs. There is no perfect risk-free solution in any of this. Life is all about managing different types of risk.
It's a balance.
It is. The question you have to ask yourself is, what is the primary purpose of this specific pile of metal? Is it for bartering for supplies in a Mad Max apocalypse scenario? Or is it for long-term wealth preservation and protection against currency debasement?
Okay, because if it's for Mad Max, you definitely need it in your hand. You can't barter with a warehouse receipt.
Exactly. If you need to buy bread or fuel when the grid goes down, you need some silver dimes in your pocket. But let's be realistic. How much of your total net worth do you allocate to buying bread in the apocalypse? 5%? Maybe 10%.
Hopefully not 100%.
Right. So the smart money approach is usually a hybrid one. They argue, do you want to lose 10% of your wealth guaranteed right now, today, by paying the tax just for the comfort of having it close by? Or do you prioritize keeping your capital fully intact?
So maybe the real strategy is you have a two-tiered system. You keep a small emergency stack at home. And maybe you bite the bullet on the tax, or you save up and buy over the threshold for just that portion.
Yeah.
But for the bulk of your wealth, the retirement stack, you vault it tax-free.
That is the balanced approach. You keep the front door money, the emergency fund, accessible and close. But the heavy lifting, the deep storage for generational wealth, that goes to the tax-free vault. You prioritize preserving that 10% of your purchasing power over having immediate physical proximity to every single ounce.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about not being dogmatic about it.
Yeah.
If you don't hold it, you don't own it is a catchy slogan. But if paying to hold it costs you 10% of your stack, then you effectively own 10% less anyway.
But precisely. You are paying a very heavy insurance premium for that proximity. And frankly, home storage has its own set of risks. Theft, fire, natural disaster.
You telling your brother-in-law about it after you've had a few beers.
Exactly. Loose lips sink ships. A professionally managed vault in Delaware doesn't have a brother-in-law problem.
That might be the best argument for vaulting I've ever heard. Okay, so we've audited the map, we've mapped the states, and we've looked at the vaulting escape hatch. I want to move into the 2026 filter, the practical application. We need to leave the listener with a forensic checklist. What do they need to do right now, today, after hearing this?
The very first step is that visual concept we talked about, the bleeding map. You need to know exactly where you stand.
It sounds so simple, but I would bet 90% of people listening have no idea what their specific state laws are on this. They just pay whatever the register tells them to pay.
You need to go online and verify your status. Are you in a red state, a tax state? Are you in a green state, a haven? Or are you in a yellow state, a trap?
And don't just guess or go by old information. These laws change. New taxes get added, exemptions get repealed.
Search for state sales tax on Precious Metals 2026, or look for the sales tax map on the websites of major online dealers. They usually keep them updated because, well, it's good for their business.
Okay, so that's step one. Step two, the threshold receipt.
If you find out you're in a trap state, you need to memorize that number. Is it $500? $1,000? $2,000? And then you have to respect the threshold.
Never, ever buy below the exemption line.
Never. Make it a hard and fast rule. If the limit is $1,000 and you have $900 to spend, you do not buy. You wait. You save $100 more. Do not donate your wealth to the state government simply out of impatience.
Stop the microtransactions if they trigger a tax event. It's discipline.
Yeah.
It's what you call sniper mode.
And then step 3, cross borders. If your local laws are hostile, if you're in a thief state with no exemptions at all, you have to seriously look at out-of-state storage.
You have to bypass the dragnet. Don't let your zip code determine your return on investment.
It's all about taking control back. The state is counting on you being lazy. They are counting on you just paying the 8% because it's convenient.
Convenience fees are just taxes in disguise. I've always said that.
Exactly. The little bit of extra effort it takes to set up a vault account or to have the discipline to save for a larger purchase is how you win. That effort is your alpha. It's your investment edge.
This has been, honestly, it's a bit infuriating to hear, but it's also incredibly empowering because once you see the map, you can actually navigate it.
That's the whole goal. The laws are complex, sometimes intentionally so, but navigating them is literally the difference between profit and loss. You can pick the right asset, silver, but if you buy it the wrong way, you can still lose money.
I want to wrap up with a final thought here. We started this whole deep dive with the bank teller. The idea that exchanging money shouldn't cost you money. And I think the believer in me, the one who just wants to protect my family's wealth, is screaming right now.
It's a valid emotion. It feels deeply unjust.
We spend so much time and energy terrified of the IRS. We read all these articles about capital gains tax. We worry, what if silver goes to $100 and I sell? The feds are going to take 28%.
That's the backdoor tax, the exit tax that everyone focuses on.
But the final warning I want to leave everyone with is this. Most people are worried about the IRS taking 28% of their gains eventually, someday in the future. But they completely forget that their local state is stealing 8 or 10% of their principal the minute they buy.
You're worrying about the exit while leaving your front door wide open for thieves to walk in.
Protect your front door first. Stop the bleeding at the point of purchase. Because if you lose 10% on day one, you have to work twice as hard and take on twice as much market risk just to get back to the starting line.
Well said. A perfect summary.
And here's a little tease for a future deep dive. Once you've navigated this map, once you acquire this tax-free silver and you have it vaulted safely, what happens next? Eventually you pass away. And then the government comes right back for another bite of the apple.
The estate tax. The death tax.
Exactly. So how do you transfer that tax-free silver to your heirs without the IRS taking a massive 40% cut? There is a mechanism. It's called the step-up in basis. And it is the holy grail of generational wealth transfer.
It's an incredibly powerful tool, but you have to understand how it applies to physical assets like collectibles. It works very differently for gold than it does for stocks or real estate.
And we're going to cover that in a future deep dive. But for today, the homework is simple. Check your map, check your threshold, and don't let the teller pocket your change.
Keep your bucket from leaking.
This has been the deep dive. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care, everyone.